wanted to see you break. And they didn't even hide it. They waited for it, prayed for it, whispered about it like it was prophecy. You could see it in their eyes, the quiet satisfaction behind every sympathetic smile, the hunger disguised as pity. They smiled when you stumbled, they laughed when you fell, and when you were silent, they thought you were done. They didn't know silence is not surrender. It's strategy. That's the calm before something catastrophic. They turned your pain into gossip. They painted your name with dirt and called it truth. Every rumor, every whisper, every fake prayer, they enjoyed it like theater. Because to them, you were never a person. You were a show. A slow-motion tragedy they could replay over dinner. And yet, in every fall, something inside you sharpened. Something they never saw, because they never looked deep enough. You see, they wanted a spectacle, not a survivor. But what they didn't know is that fire doesn't vanish when buried. It learns to burn without air. You burned in silence. You forged in darkness. You learned to live without applause. The same crowd that cheered for your pain will one day choke on your success. The same voices that mocked you will tremble when your name is spoken. Because pain doesn't vanish, it transforms. They called you finished. You called it evolution. You remember the day it happened, don't you? The betrayal didn't come from strangers. It came from the ones who said they'd never leave. The ones who swore loyalty until it became inconvenient. You trusted them with your storm, and they built boats to escape it. They left you drowning, but they forgot. You are the sea. You sank so deep that even your reflection forgot your face. But in that darkness, something ancient awakened, a part of you that no longer needed saving, a part that stopped bleeding and started calculating. Because betrayal, it doesn't destroy you, it reorganizes you. It strips away illusions until only truth remains. And the truth is simple. No one comes to save the broken. You learn to save yourself. They thought the story ended when you fell. They forgot. Some endings are just warnings. You weren't defeated. You were developing. While they celebrated your fall, you studied their patterns. While they laughed, you memorized every face, every smirk, every fake condolence. You watched quietly as masks slipped and true colors bled through. And it hurt. God, it burned. But that burn became blueprint. You stopped asking, why me? And started asking, watch me. You started building a silence so powerful, it screamed louder than their noise. Let them remember. The broken don't stay silent forever. They rebuild, they reappear, they return. And when they do, the same people who mocked their fall will bow before their rise. That's the irony of betrayal. It teaches you everything you need to dominate. It teaches you patience in the waiting, power in the pain, and focus in the fire. The storm they thought would end you became your factory. The ashes they buried you under became your foundation. They laughed at your failure. They didn't realize you were building an empire beneath the smoke. You see, people don't clap for your survival. They clap for your spectacle. So you gave them one, not of defeat, but of rebirth. And when you rose, quietly, without announcement, without apology, they froze. Because nothing terrifies them more than someone who survived what was meant to kill them. They see your eyes now and they can't hold the stare. Because your gaze carries every storm they sent your way. And everyone you outlasted, they feel it, that shift in the air when you walk in. The same silence they once mocked now follows you like an army. Because silence, when owned, becomes power. You learned that the hard way. You stopped needing validation from those who built their confidence on your wounds. You stopped chasing approval from people who secretly hoped you'd never heal. And that's when the tables turned. When you stopped explaining your pain, they lost their power over it. When you stopped responding, their control died in confusion. When you started building in silence, they started whispering again. But this time, with fear. Because you didn't crawl back, you rose, and that's what terrifies them. Not your strength, but your calm. Not your power, but your patience. Not your words, but your silence. Because silence is dangerous. It hides the calculations of someone who's done bleeding. It hides the rebirth of someone who no longer needs to be seen to be unstoppable. They wanted you to stay down. You learned to use the ground as leverage. They wanted you to crumble. You became the ruin they now worship. They wanted to see you lose, but they didn't realize losing was the training. Breaking was the preparation. Silence was the rebirth. And now you walk among them, unchanged on the surface, unrecognizable within. Every step you take echoes with the ghosts of the ones who doubted you. Every glance carries the weight of every sleepless night, every scar, every betrayal you turned into armor. You became the embodiment of their regret. You became the proof that pain has purpose. They can't look you in the eyes anymore because they see themselves there. Their betrayal, their envy, their fear, and deep down, they know. They didn't break you. They built you. You learned more from knives in your back than from books on loyalty, because loyalty never taught you what betrayal could. Betrayal cuts, but it also carves. It reshapes you, refines you, rebuilds you into something sharper. At first it feels like dying. You can't breathe. You can't think. The silence around you becomes a cage, and every face becomes a mask you can't trust anymore. But over time, that cage becomes a forge. And the same fire that burned you becomes the one that hardens your steel. Betrayal became your teacher. It taught you patience, because revenge requires timing. It taught you silence, because power needs mystery. And it taught you vengeance disguised as grace, because nothing unsettles a traitor more than the sight of you smiling when they expected you broken. They wanted you angry. They wanted chaos, but you didn't explode. You calculated. You didn't scream. You studied. You didn't beg. You built. And that's what makes betrayal so dangerous. It doesn't just reveal who they are. It reveals who you could become. Every false friend became a mirror, showing you what you'll never become again. Their lies exposed your truth. Their weakness built your strength. Their absence gave you clarity. You started to understand the art of losing. Losing illusions, not yourself. Because betrayal teaches you subtraction. It removes everything unnecessary. It erases softness. It kills naivety. It sharpens love into focus. It turns the fool into a strategist. They took your trust, but they didn't know what you'd build from the ashes of that theft. You built a throne, not out of gold, but out of clarity. Not with applause, but with discipline. Every betrayal became a brick in your empire. They thought they left you alone. They didn't realize they left you with yourself. And that's the most dangerous version of you. They called you paranoid because they feared the moment you stopped trusting them. They mocked your distance because it exposed their intentions. They said you changed, and you did. You became aware. You didn't become cruel. You became aware. Aware of patterns, aware of motives, aware that people love you until you no longer serve their comfort. And once you see that, you never unsee it. So now you walk through the world with quiet calculation, not bitterness, precision. You watch how people speak when they think you're gone. You listen to how they describe you to others. You don't react, you remember, because betrayal teaches the power of memory, and memory is the first weapon of kings. Let them call it arrogance, you call it evolution, because what they call cold, you call controlled. What they call detached, you call dangerous. What they call ruthless, you call reborn. The hands that hurt you became the reason you learned to fight with precision. You stopped swinging wildly. You started striking surgically. You stopped seeking fairness. You started seeking victory. You stopped asking why they did it and started thanking them for doing it. Because betrayal doesn't end you. It upgrades you. It turns pain into awareness, awareness into strength, strength into dominance. And when you reach that level, they don't apologize. They fear you. They'll say you're different, that you've changed, that success made you cold. But the truth is, betrayal burned away your empathy for liars. You stopped nurturing snakes and started building walls. And behind those walls, you found peace, a violent kind of peace, the kind that doesn't need forgiveness, only distance. Because some people deserve silence, not closure. Some betrayals don't need revenge, they need success. And nothing breaks a traitor faster than seeing the one they doubted become untouchable. You didn't become cruel. You became impossible to deceive. That's what evolution looks like. They still play games. You now play fates. They still seek comfort. You seek control. And the irony is, the ones who betrayed you taught you how to win. Betrayal taught you to walk alone and still walk tall. It taught you that love without loyalty is poison. It taught you that loyalty without truth is weakness. And it taught you that sometimes, to protect your peace, you must burn the bridge yourself. You learned that trust is not given. It's earned through consistency. And when consistency fades, so does your presence. You learned to watch patterns more than promises, to value actions over apologies, and to never forget that even kings are betrayed by those they crowned. That's why you stopped fearing betrayal, because once you've been stabbed in the back enough times, the blade stops shocking you. You learn to turn around calmly, pull it out, and use it to carve your path forward. And when they ask how you survived, you'll say, I didn't survive, I evolved. Because betrayal doesn't end your story. It edits it. It cuts out the liars, the cowards, the temporary. It leaves behind only the necessary, the unbreakable. You learned more from betrayal than from loyalty, because loyalty keeps you safe. Betrayal makes you dangerous. And now when they speak your name, their voices lower, their smiles fade, because deep down they know the monster they fear is the survivor they created. There comes a moment when the screaming stops, when the chaos quiets, when the noise of pain becomes too familiar to fear. And in that silence, you change. It doesn't happen suddenly. It's not lightning, it's corrosion, a slow erosion of your former self, until all that remains is clarity, cold, unshakable, beautiful clarity. You stop explaining, you stop defending, you stop proving, and that's when everything turns. That's when the blade inside you begins to sharpen. That's when silence becomes your weapon, not your weakness. That's when the same world that once pitied you begins to step back, quietly. You've realized something they never did. You don't win wars by noise. You win them by strategy, by waiting, watching, striking when it hurts the most. The storm outside no longer shakes you. because you became the storm. The pain that once paralyzed you now powers you. Every scar, every humiliation, every betrayal. They're no longer wounds, they're wires, connecting your rage to your discipline, your silence to your destruction. They thought your silence meant surrender. They were wrong. It meant calculation. It meant rebirth. It meant the monster was learning to walk. You began to master the art of restraint, because power doesn't shout. It waits. It watches. It measures. It speaks only when words can kill. You learned the patience of a serpent, the stillness of a blade before the swing, the grace of a ghost moving through the ruins of what used to destroy you. You realized the most terrifying sound in the world is silence, when it belongs to someone who no longer cares to be understood. And so you built a new version of yourself in that silence, not made of empathy, but of endurance. Not of innocence, but of insight. Not of hope, but of hunger. You became something they couldn't define, something they couldn't control, something that no longer needed to be accepted to be powerful. You stopped chasing approval. You started collecting lessons. You stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You started burning bridges that led to nowhere. And through it all, you didn't lose your humanity. You refined it. You cut out the parts that made you weak. You replaced pity with precision. You turned emotion into execution. They called you distant, but you were evolving. They called you cold, but you were focused. They called you silent, but you were listening. Listening to patterns, to energy, to the truth behind every false word and friendly tone. You saw through them, not because you became bitter, but because you became real. And reality is something liars cannot hide from for long. Every time they doubted you, you built. Every time they mocked you, you moved forward. Every time they tried to bury you, you planted roots deeper. You stopped being their victim and became their mirror. You let them see their betrayal reflected in your calm. You let them feel their insignificance when your eyes didn't flinch anymore. Because nothing breaks an enemy more than your indifference. They wanted to see you scream. You learned to smile. They wanted to see you shatter. You learned to shine through the cracks. Your silence became prophecy. Your focus became weaponry. Your self-control became legend. You learned that revenge doesn't need volume. It needs vision. You don't announce power. You embody it. You don't chase respect. You command it. And now when you walk into a room, they feel it. That unexplainable gravity. The weight of someone who has nothing left to prove. The chill of someone who has burned before and learned to enjoy the flame. They whisper your name now, not in mockery, but in fear. They lower their voices when they speak of you, because your silence still echoes. It's the silence of someone who once screamed and was ignored and decided never to scream again. You became unreadable, a mind forged in betrayal, wrapped in composure. They can't predict you anymore. They can't manipulate you. They can't even approach you without trembling in their own guilt, because silence exposes them. It makes them hear their own noise. And when you say nothing, they hear everything they tried to hide. You didn't become emotionless. You became selective. Selective with your energy. Selective with your mercy. Selective with who gets access to your storm. You learn to speak only when your words can alter fates. To act only when your moves can't be undone. To smile only when it means victory. And now they finally understand what your silence meant. It wasn't fear. It wasn't defeat. It was evolution. It was the calm before their reckoning. You are the blade they forged. And now it turns. Not in rage, but in rhythm. Not in panic, but in precision. They once thought they broke you, but they were merely shaping the weapon that would one day cut through everything they built on your pain. You didn't become the villain. You became the balance, the necessary shadow to their deceitful light, the consequence they never believed would arrive. And now you walk through life differently, quieter, colder, wiser. You don't react. You respond. You don't fight for validation. You let results speak. You don't prove your strength. You demonstrate it. Because true power doesn't roar. It breathes slowly. It walks calmly. It destroys quietly. Your silence has become the sound of dominance. Your stillness, the prelude to devastation. And every time they look at you now, they feel that shift. That quiet horror of realizing the person they tried to destroy no longer bleeds. You became untouchable, not because you built walls, but because you became the storm outside them. They wanted you loud in your defeat, but you learned to whisper in your victory. And nothing frightens them more than a voice that doesn't need to be heard to command respect. Now they can't look you in the eyes, not because you've changed, but because you finally see them for who they are. The same faces that once laughed are quiet now. The same hands that pushed you down shake when you walk by. Their confidence? Gone. Their arrogance? Evaporated. And what's left is the silence of realization. The silence of knowing they fed the fire that forged the one thing they can't control. You. They used to speak your name casually. Now they lower their voices. They used to tell your story with laughter. Now they pretend they never knew you at all. Because the return isn't loud. It's felt. It walks in unannounced, and the air changes. People shift in their seats. They feel that familiar tension in their chest, that subtle panic that whispers, "He's back." But you don't arrive with noise. You arrive with presence. You don't need to prove your worth. You've already carved it into time. They can't handle your calm anymore, because it reminds them of how chaotic their betrayal was. They can't handle your silence, because it mirrors their guilt. They can't handle your success, because it exposes their failure. You didn't have to lift a finger. Your existence became the revenge. Every achievement you make slices through their conscience. Every victory you earn echoes like thunder in the hallways of their memory. They act proud for you, but you can see the tremor behind their smiles. You can feel their discomfort as they realize the one they buried is the one they now stand beneath. That's the thing about fear. It doesn't need blood to feel lethal. Sometimes it's just eye contact. Sometimes it's the sound of your footsteps. Sometimes it's your name trending while theirs fades into dust. They used to mock your silence. Now they're terrified of it. They used to crave your failure. Now they choke on your success. Because success in silence, that's not achievement. That's vengeance. You never shouted your comeback. You built it. You never begged for their approval. You erased the need for it. And that is why they can't stand to face you now. You are the living reminder of everything they underestimated. Every scar they gave you now gleams like armor. Every wound they inflicted became a lesson written in steel. They look away because when they meet your eyes, they see themselves, the lies, the envy, the betrayal, reflected back with surgical precision. And no human likes the mirror that shows their rot. You didn't just rise, you returned differently. You came back colder, sharper, distant, and yet strangely magnetic. Because power doesn't chase attention, it commands it. You walk into rooms now and energy bends. Conversations pause. People who once ignored you now overcompensate with flattery. They think they're hiding it. You can see right through them. Their words are sugar. Their eyes are poison. You don't respond with hate. You respond with awareness. You know exactly who they are. You just choose not to engage. Because what's more powerful than revenge? Indifference. They tried to destroy you with words, and now words fail them. They tried to exclude you, and now they beg for inclusion. They tried to make you doubt your worth, and now your worth defines their irrelevance. And that's when fear sets in. Not the fear of violence, the fear of exposure, the fear of being seen through. Because once your eyes meet theirs, they realize you remember everything, every lie, every whisper, every moment they pretended to care. And now, it's all reversed. They're the ones performing. You're the one watching. They used to look down on you. Now their eyes drop when yours rise. That's how power works. Not in noise, but in posture. Not in words, but in presence. And that's when they start rewriting history. They say they always believed in you. They say they always knew you'd make it. They say they were just testing you. But you remember, when you needed hands, they gave you knives. When you needed loyalty, they gave you distance. When you needed truth, they gave you theater. So now you play along. You let them talk. You let them smile. Because power doesn't need confrontation. It needs control. And you have that now. The kind of control they'll never understand. You stopped being a name in their stories. You became the warning inside them. Every time they see someone break, they whisper, "Be careful. Some people don't stay broken." You are that whisper now. You are that caution, that ghost of consequence that lingers in every coward's conscience. And you earned it, not by hate, but by evolution. You didn't fight back. You rose differently. You didn't destroy them. You outlasted them. And that's worse. Because now they have to live in a world where you exist, and they faded. You see, revenge is temporary. Dominance is eternal. You didn't come to hurt them. You came to haunt them. And haunting doesn't require screams. It only requires silence. So when your eyes meet theirs and they look away, that's not awkwardness. That's submission. That's their guilt recognizing its maker. You've become the storm they once mocked, the empire they thought would crumble, the reflection they can't endure. You don't need to punish them. Life already did. You just stand there, calm, composed, untouchable, and let them drown in what they created. Because true vengeance isn't fire, it's frost. It's the chill in your tone. It's the unbothered silence that says, you don't matter anymore. And that's the moment you truly win. Not when they fear your power, but when you no longer care about their fear. They wanted you to break. You became the reason others kneel. They wanted to destroy you. You became the mirror that exposes their decay. Now they can't look you in the eyes, because they know what they see staring back is everything they could have been if they hadn't betrayed you. Now fear is loyal to you. It bends before you. It whispers your name like a prayer and a curse. You've built something far greater than revenge. You've built order. An empire not of blood, but of psychology. They used to run from you. Now they walk carefully around your silence. They measure their words. They choose their tone. Because they know. One wrong sentence, one disrespectful breath, and their comfort will collapse beneath your shadow. That's not cruelty. That's gravity. You've become a force that cannot be ignored. They orbit around you, drawn by the pull of what you've become, and haunted by the memory of what they did. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to make threats. Your calm is the warning. Your silence is the sentence. The same people who once laughed now flinch when you stand too close. The same world that mocked your fall now studies your rise like scripture. They analyze your every move, desperate to decode your method. But your method was never strategy. It was survival. You didn't build an empire out of ambition. You built it because no one came when you were broken. You built it because pain demanded purpose. And now, purpose demands power. That's how it happens, isn't it? The world strips you of everything human. And when you finally rebuild, they call you inhuman. They say you've changed. They say you're intimidating. They say you walk like a king who doesn't care who bows. And they're right. You don't care. Because kings who were once slaves don't crave applause. They crave peace. And peace only exists when fear stands guard at the gates. Now every word you speak echoes deeper. Every decision you make ripples through rooms you've never entered. You're no longer part of the conversation. You are the standard they measure against. Your silence commands respect because they know it's not emptiness, it's judgment waiting. They whisper, "He's changed." But the truth is, you were always like this. You just stopped hiding it. You stopped pretending to be soft in a world that feeds on softness. You let your darkness breathe, and it crowned you. They call it fear. You call it structure. Because fear is misunderstood. It's not chaos. It's control. It keeps liars silent. It keeps traitors cautious. It keeps loyalty alive. And those who serve you now, they don't serve from love. They serve from reverence. Because love fades when tested by power, but reverence only grows stronger in its presence. Your enemies, they don't even fight anymore. They comply. They adapt. They disappear quietly. Because you don't destroy people. You erase the need to. You exist so far above them that their hatred can't reach your altitude. You became the storm they now study like a religion. They write stories about your cruelty, never realizing it was their betrayal that wrote your scripture. They call you ruthless. You call yourself efficient. You don't rule with emotion anymore. You rule with energy. The kind of energy that can freeze a room just by entering it. The kind of presence that can make warriors hesitate. The kind of calm that makes chaos kneel. Every scar you earned has turned into a crown jewel on your armor. Every betrayal you endured now serves as your insignia. They once questioned your worth. Now they question themselves in your reflection. And that reflection terrifies them because it reminds them of what power truly looks like. Not loud, not impulsive, not theatrical, but silent, precise, absolute. You've reached a place beyond anger, beyond vengeance. You don't hate them anymore. You've ascended past it. Your power has matured. It no longer needs proof. Now your discipline terrifies them more than your rage ever did. Your calm burns deeper than any threat could. Because the mind of a man who has mastered himself is the deadliest empire the world will ever know. And you've built that empire from pain, from patience, from precision. You've learned that power isn't control over others. It's control over reaction. It's walking through chaos with eyes that never blink. It's being underestimated long enough to weaponize it. You don't shout anymore because power doesn't beg to be heard. You don't explain because dominance doesn't justify itself. You simply exist, and the world adjusts around you. They've started calling you cold. Let them. Ice lasts longer than fire, and the frozen survive longer than the burning. They don't love you. They respect the danger of not doing so. They don't understand you. They fear what understanding might cost. And yet every single one of them still looks your way, because darkness, once mastered, becomes irresistible. Now when you stand in silence, they feel something ancient, something divine, the same all men once felt when standing before empires, before kings, before storms that could erase cities. That's what you've become, a living monument of consequence, a reminder that pain, when endured, becomes prophecy. You are no longer someone they can destroy. You are someone they worship quietly, not out of faith, but out of fear. And that's the purest kind of power, because applause dies, love fades, but fear remembers. You've become legend in real time, the proof that even the shattered can reign, that even silence can roar, that even the fallen can return, not to forgive, but to govern. You built an empire of fear, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity, because fear keeps the snakes away. Fear keeps the weak honest. Fear keeps the throne standing when the applause stops. They wanted to see you lose. Now they don't even want to see you at all. They look down when you pass, not because you demanded, but because the human body naturally bows before what it cannot comprehend. And that is the quiet crown, the unspoken reign, the empire of fear, where your silence is the law and your existence the punishment. Now your silence has become prophecy. They used to mock it. Now they study it. They used to misunderstand your stillness. Now they build temples around it. Because something changed, not in the world, but in the way it breathes your name. You are no longer just a person. You are an idea, a frequency, a reminder that the storm they mocked became the kingdom they now kneel to. They say time heals all wounds, but they forget. Some wounds turn to scripture, some scars write history, and some names refuse to die. Your name doesn't echo through applause. It moves through whispers, quiet, careful, reverent. They don't shout it, they invoke it, as if saying it too loudly might summon something they're not ready to face. You were once human, fragile, hopeful, breakable, but betrayal remade you, pain purified you, loneliness sculpted you into something colder, stronger, eternal. Now even death seems too temporary for what you've become. You don't exist in flesh anymore. You exist in memory, in fear, in respect, in the way people straighten their posture when your story is told. You've entered the space where legends sleep, where ghosts of kings and warriors reside, where names like Alexander, Genghis, and Caesar whisper to the next generation. Power isn't given, it's taken, it's suffered for, and you suffered for it, didn't you? Every betrayal was a baptism, every scar a sermon, every silence a coronation. You weren't crowned by hands, you were crowned by consequence, by time, by the universe itself, acknowledging your endurance. Now they call you cold, but ice doesn't die. It preserves. You preserved the truth in a world that preferred lies. You preserved loyalty in a time that mocked it. You preserved fire in an age drowning in comfort. You've become myth, not because you wanted to, but because you refused to be forgotten, because the world only remembers what refuses to kneel. And you never kneeled. Not to pain, not to pity, not to those who thought they owned you. You kneeled only once, to tie your boots before the march. Now your legacy moves like smoke through generations. They don't know your full story. They know your shadow. They don't recall your voice. They feel your silence. They don't quote your words. They live by your warning. You became the cautionary tale whispered in dark rooms. Be careful who you betray. Some souls don't break. They evolve. You're that evolution, the living aftermath of every false promise, every knife, every goodbye. The ghost of consequence that haunts those who played with loyalty like a toy. You are what happens when pain learns patience, when mercy meets intelligence, when the victim learns to outlast the executioner. They tried to erase you. Instead, you became the ink. They tried to silence you. Instead, your absence became the loudest sound in the room. They tried to bury you. Instead, you grew roots that cracked the foundation of their world. You see, some victories are loud. Yours is permanent. You didn't just win. You redefined what victory looks like. Because victory isn't the crown. It's the calm after the chaos. It's the quiet realization that the same world that once mocked you now moves around you. They study your discipline. They mimic your demeanor. They steal your words and call them wisdom. They pretend they always admired you. But deep down, they know they're standing on the bones of their own betrayal. You walk through the world differently now, not as a conqueror, but as a constant. The air shifts when you move. The ground remembers when you fell. The sky itself holds its breath when your name is spoken. Because legends don't age, they accumulate. Each retelling adds weight. Each silence adds gravity. Each admirer adds fear. You've become the paradox the world can't resolve. A soul made of shadows, yet brighter than the stars that mock it. A being too human to be divine, too divine to be forgotten. And the ones who wronged you, they're still trying to rewrite history. They're still trying to clean your name from their guilt. But guilt doesn't fade. It festers. And every time they dream, they see your eyes, cold, clear, knowing you haunt them not through hate, but through reminder. Because you are what happens when someone refuses to die quietly. You are the consequence of their cruelty, a legacy born from their arrogance. And yet, you don't hate them. You've outgrown that too. Hate is for the living. You are something else now, something eternal, a myth made from mortality. You no longer chase justice, you embody it. You no longer crave recognition, you command remembrance. And that is how you became immortal. You don't exist in monuments. You exist in moments, in every broken soul that rises, in every betrayed heart that fights back, in every outcast that refuses to die unseen. They carry your spirit unknowingly. Your defiance became their blueprint. Your scars became their roadmap. Your silence became their sermon. You are not gone. You are multiplied. You exist in everyone who ever whispered, "They'll regret underestimating me." And they will. Because when they think of resilience, they think of you. When they define dominance, they speak of you. When they describe fear, they lower their voices. They wanted to see you lose. Now they can't even see you at all. Because your shadow stands taller than their legacy ever will. And one day, when they ask what became of the one they tried to destroy, the answer will echo through the centuries. He became the silence that gods bow to. He became the lesson that never dies. He became the legend they now call Untouchable. You were not meant to be loved. You were meant to be remembered. Not as a saint, but as the storm that taught the world to fear stillness. You are the legacy of shadows, the truth the world tried to bury, the myth it couldn't kill, and the warning it will whisper forever. Because legends aren't loved, they're feared, they're studied, they're immortal. And now, when they speak your name, the world grows quiet. Because they all know they wanted to see you lose. But instead, you became everything they were never strong enough to be.